Hello everyone, Dev Shanbag from Red Hat. I'm here with Kenny Cheng from Telstra. Today we are going beyond the standard presentation. We want to have a conversation to talk about the real-world transformation that is driven by the mobile Ansible core services team, the MASIS team at Telstra. We want to explore Telstra's automation journey using AAP, specifically how they are moving from manual or task-based operations towards a fully autonomous networks future using Ansible Automation Platform by taking what they see in their networks today into immediate automated action. To set the stage, it's important to understand the why behind the journey and the transformation. Kenny, perhaps if you could kick us off with sharing, how you set up the vision for this particular team, and how does this tie into the broader organizational strategy, which is the Connected Futures 30 strategy?
Absolutely. So I think one of the key things that we've got in Telstra is a strategy on Connect the Future. And one of that major objectives is around the Telstra autonomous networks. And part of the challenge here is where we need to get to level 4 autonomy by about 2030. Now, the definition in this case is you've got selected areas that will reach that, but in between, we're going to try to get towards that whole goal in the global networks and technology division.
Sorry, some issues with...
Yep. So in this situation, what you can see on the screen is a goal by our department. 2028, you want to hit level 2, level 3 in a lot of situations. But as you can see, execution is actually a key critical part of this strategy. And that's where Ansible Automation Platform plays a critical role in our team, in the way that we develop the mobile core space as well. And that's part of the reason where we're trying to align with the different opportunities using things like APIs, event-driven Ansible, and then eventually some of the new up-and-coming features that you've seen earlier today around AI as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you make. Moving from human-triggered automation to event-driven. And I think there's a lot of emphasis also on putting the right guardrails in place before you build that foundation and bring in that intelligence. I just wanted to have another point at how you're moving from L1, which is the assisted operations, to L3, conditional autonomous networks. Perhaps you could share with us, how did you and the team look at these building blocks and build towards your automation strategy that aligns to the Connected Futures 30 strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a problem with it's coming through. So part of the process is to start building the blocks towards it. And most teams would have started that journey already, where you build these playbooks, you build that automation, you make that become available to other teams to run it. When you think about where the future is going, where you got agents that are going to run your automation, all that sort of things, if you don't trust a team next to you to run it, why are you going to trust an agent? You can't blame the agent in this situation. So I think we need to make these small steps towards other people, other teams, and then potentially events running that automation. And that's where we start moving towards that level of maturing, letting some of the events drive that automation, letting other orchestrators, other teams potentially running it. And then start introducing that intelligence factor into the wider part of your automation program, the many layers that you have across the automation, how you build it, how you run it, how you analyze things. That's where you start moving to that next level of autonomy before you sort of start looking, how do we remove those guardrails, let the agents basically go wired in the network as well.
Yeah, look, before we look at the solution, perhaps we'll context set a little bit, let understand the baseline. Every network, as you know, has their own set of challenges. We just wanted to understand from you, how did you folks go about looking at some of these challenges? Obviously, there'll be inconsistencies within the environment.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could paint us a picture of what was life like before you introduced event-driven Ansible workflows. Maybe share a bit about some of the real operational impact, the toll on your team when you are handling these alerts manually?
No, absolutely. So most of you would have had experience with something like a PagerDuty or something that even generates an alarm. And what you find is that these incidents usually result in a recall or someone having to support a situation or alert. So they usually follow a step. I'm going to acknowledge it, or I've been paged first. Acknowledge it. I'm going to, in this situation, go and look at what the incident is. For this, it's an inconsistency in the slice ID. So what that support team member is going to have to do, log into that node that generated that alert, look at all of the configuration, gather that configuration, figure out what is it that the radio side has to realign, and then probably send that as an email. Hey, in your next change request window, could you please realign this configuration? And whilst the frequency of this to actually address it is around 10 minutes or so, when you look at the number of alerts across the month, you're talking about potentially 300 plus as well. Now, in a manual process, you'll probably do that in batches and bulk, but on average, you're talking about 12, 24 hours of an individual's time having to support this, because if you don't sort of realign that, you're going to have inconsistent experiences on a network slice as well.
That really stands out. How the compounding effect of that problem, it's not 1 minute, 2 minute, or 10 minute kind of procedures, but it's those procedures running continuously for over a month, that cumulative drag that, that's the hidden cost that is within, not in the business case for anyone, but, it kind of comes up and it's a real life situation for some of your teams.
Yeah.
Perhaps, maybe we'll just, shift gears a little bit. You have a demo for us. Could you walk us through this demo? Maybe share with us, how event-driven Ansible is looking at some of these system alerts and fixing those, and then perhaps, share with us some of these metrics.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity here. So in this demo right now, what we're showing, so in this situation, what we're generating is just the alert in this situation. So what we're going to see here is actually PagerDuty. So for those who've used it, it's familiar grounds. So the actual incident that we have here is an inconsistent slice. And what you're seeing here is the exact part that is inconsistent being identified within the ticket itself. So this is what someone would traditionally use. In this situation, what we've actually done is hooked that event into event-driven Ansible within AAP. Now, what's running already is that rulebook that we set up, which we'll actually go and see. And in this situation, you can see exactly that specific ID that's been within the PagerDuty ticket alone. The rulebook that it runs is going to start looking at the AMF node, collect that specific configuration. And what that will do is simulate exactly what the person would have done, log into a CLI, gather that information. Instead, we've leveraged the playbook, we've gathered that, we've now collected the specific change that needs to happen on the radio side. Now, in discussion with the radios team, they preferred us to email and provide that as a CSV file to input into their automation tool. So that's their way of scheduling that change, leveraging the existing tool set. But in this situation, we've completely created that CSV file for them at the format that they wanted to, along with that email being automatically generated to them. And that's what you see here is that CSV file on the screen right now. So from the change from the previous slide to this slide, what you're seeing is the introduction of AAP into the original support aspect of it. We're using the event validation, making sure that we're capturing that event, but also leveraging the event-driven Ansible rulebook to manage the workflow. Look at, number one, get the specific netconf query, collect that information, generate that CSV file, email the radio config support team so that they can schedule it, approve that change into the RAN side. What resulted as well is that whole zero-touch automation. So within a minute, you've now essentially sorted out that issue, as opposed to potentially someone being in your team having to address the alert, logging in, do that procedure instead. It's all fully along the lines of the whole self-healing or configuration use case as well.
That's quite compelling, bringing that whole zero-touch automation to action. Obviously, you are showing that resolution in under 1 minute. For an on-call engineer, sometimes you get to that alerts, takes quite a long time. And I also love that, you're kind of bringing in some of the benefits to the radio configuration team. I think just from your experience, what has been some of these key learnings out of, all these automation that you built and implemented?
Yeah. I think as we sort of built this, we started identifying what are the people that we need. And in this situation, what we're seeing is you need a combination of end-to-end knowledge, domain knowledge, experience, the ability to create that automation, understand how to set it up as a workflow. Eventually, we also want to start introducing intelligence. So that alone is a skill set. And finally, being very good at using that specific platform, in this case, AAP. The other thing you have to be is having the time. So availability is key. And in most situations, what we're finding is people are busy with their day-to-day responsibilities to find the time to actually experiment and create these potential savings for themselves as well.
That's really compelling. You're putting together, what the organization wants into some of the tech as well as the cultural aspect. Tech alone is important, but you can only get further along if you don't have the right culture. So you're putting that people, personality, and culture and some of the guardrails putting together into what that next generation looks like.
Yeah.
Just from a people dimension point of view, how are you folks tackling some of these at Telstra?
Yeah. And I think back to that point, Telstra has a great graduate program, and this is where you start building that next generation of talent. However, they do not yet have the experience. They don't yet have the understanding of the domain. They don't yet have the experience or the skills either to create that automation. So we're relying on that next generation of talent. And what we found, and this is what actually happened within the development of this event-driven Ansible workflow, is that 2 to 5 year junior engineer is actually a sweet spot that we found. By putting them next to the mission senior SME, so this is the person who's really understands the internet and network, understands the domain, has a wealth of experience, but unfortunately that they just don't have the time, the availability to work on this. On the flip side, you've got the automation SME who is very capable in automation, who knows how to build a workflow, who understands the platform, but same equation, they're very busy, they're not available. Put a 2 to 5 year engineer who doesn't yet have the same level of responsibility. They can actually now work closely with these two experts to try to build, but also have that level of support. But also they're very ambitious. And I'm sure some of you young folk out there, that 2 to 5 year mark, you will find that it's a great stretch opportunity. But as you start delivering it, you're helping your seniors be more freed up because you're giving them less responsibility because it's now being automated through those workflows as well.
That's quite a clever solution. You're flipping the problem on its head, rather than find a unicorn where, a person knows everything and is available within your, team. Yeah. You're trying to distribute that, build a smaller team. And then I think it's not about capability, it's more about breadth and availability.
Yeah.
Just looking at path forward, how is, how are you shaping that next generation of talent?
Yeah.
How are you looking towards the L4 autonomy? Could you share something about that?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity that we have today is to start with something. And in this situation, we've started with just a frequent alert about 350, 400 times a month. That itself is a safe operation. You run a search procedure, that's great. I think as we start looking forward, we want to be a bit more ambitious. Hardware failures, things that are going to be more critical. How do we leverage event-driven Ansible? And then eventually look at some of the more AI intelligence capability that might also come along to help guide or see that decision-making process as well. And I think that's going to be one of the technology advancements that we'll have as an opportunity. But I think really the talent, it comes down to these grads, these juniors are going to become those mid-level, those seniors in the future, where the autonomous networks, where these agents are running. And if we support their development, we will end up having a autonomous networks, but also a safe, a predictable, but also a network that we can guarantee that level of performance, because a lot of the solutions that potentially will be generated as well, we know through the experience of all the seniors collaborating with these juniors that what we've created is what we need for autonomous networks as well.
Thanks a lot for sharing your journey with us. That brings us to the end of our conversation. Perhaps if we can open up for questions.
Yeah, any questions?
Hi. When you're talking about putting graduates with mission critical SMEs, would that how would that increase? Because you're saying that mission critical SMEs wouldn't have the time to work on certain issues. So wouldn't they have to invest the same time training the junior engineer, or how would that model work?
No, absolutely. I think it's a great question. It's not so much the graduates. I think I rely heavily on the juniors, like the 2 to 5 year juniors, to help the graduates. But the 2 to 5 year engineer is experienced enough that the questions they ask the senior SME are very detailed or very particular to that domain. So what you end up is the senior SME has invested originally into these juniors, and then the juniors invested in a grad. So it's actually a cycle. So the next grad comes in, they learn off the grad who's now the 2 to 5 year, the 2 to 5 year becomes the senior, and your senior becomes that end-to-end expert who will piece it all together. So it's important that we don't search for these experts people. We look at what we already have as talent, we build that talent for the future, and it becomes a cycle where you build that capability within your own teams or within your own departments as well. So it's a constant need to invest in the young people because of the availability factor. The more experienced you are, the less available you become, because you have more and more responsibility for the day-to-day operations or the running of the business or whatever ambitions the company has. You're relied on it, you have less time on the tool. Whereas these younger people, they're more ambitious. They want to do this. They want to get their hands dirty. Support that experience. That's what the message is.
I wanted to ask a question about the scenario you ran through. You talked about generating a CSV file for the brand team. Do you see that in your evolution that you'll eventually get to a point where you'll actually automate across? Now, I understand you said it needs to be scheduled and it has to be put in I understand that from a process perspective.
Yeah.
But do you see that as ambition to ultimately get there where it's doing the whole thing end to end?
Oh, absolutely. I think in the discussions that we've had, it's an interface that would be something that they want to create. I think in the day-to-day scheme of things, it's not top on their priority. But I think the message here is if you create these interfaces, anyone can call the API or anyone can call your playbook. I think it's about creating these interfaces and being ready at any time. I think anyone or any team is going to need some of those end-to-end jobs or configuration jobs. And being ready is one of the aspects as well, and leveraging AAP's native AI, API, and even some of the MCP stuff as well. That's something that we want to start exposing, but also safeguarding. So not just exposing, but we want to put the right safeguards in those workflows to say, hey, that's not something we want to allow, or hey, it doesn't pass our checks, so we won't let that happen either. So we want to make sure that it is protected automation as well.
The PagerDuty example that you showed. So you're saying that, PagerDuty will call up a person at 2 a.m. in the morning. In this case, is the first protocol the AI, and then it doesn't escalate after that? And so that the call person doesn't actually know?
It's not really, in this example, there's no AI, right? It's simply workflows. But
workflows.
Yeah, so PagerDuty in this situation, it could be Splunk, it could be anything that generates an alert or event. The PagerDuty will send it to AAP, who will then process that specific event. Now, we will, once we've processed it, we will acknowledge it, but the alert will still happen. It's just that within a minute, the person might find it, they see it, oh, it's already closed. Okay, done. So it's not that the alert doesn't happen. It's we still need the alert to happen because what if our workflow didn't work? Or what if what if it didn't work? So the ticket won't get acknowledged. So the original process is the first process becomes the fallback.
Right.
As opposed to the main primary support. So the person might still get the alert, but when they click into, it's already been solved by the workflow, AAP.
Okay, thanks.
While I give you a moment to think, I have a question. So a lot of our customers during our interactions are also making that shift towards event-driven Ansible or event-driven automation with Ansible. And you just touched upon it, basically how it came into fruition. How do you, in fact, use it as part of your workflow? So were there any initial lessons learned that you can share?
We were too ambitious. We tried to do too much at the start. I think what was successful was to actually be a bit more practical. What are the small things, day-to-day things that we could tackle? I think get those runs under the board first.
Wonderful.
It gives you actually extra time. And then you can start tackling the more complex ones or where like things like a hardware fail, I want to drain those. These are sort of the things where it actually is more evasive type of procedures. I'd stick with non-invasive first, get those feeling, but also it's a bit of learning that needs to happen. Once you've got that learning, you're familiar with it, the world's your oyster situation. Go nuts.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And we may have time for just one final question. Anyone's got one?
Yeah, so I guess establishing good monitoring is a proper good base.
Yes.
To start off with, so you can interact with whatever comes out of that monitoring, right?
Yes. I think monitoring is key. I think we see a lot of situations where you get a lot of monitoring that you end up like turning off. I think having the right balance, but sometimes it's those noisy alarms that will cause, and I think you don't want to skip them either, but leveraging something like event-driven Ansible to go and figure out, is it really that important or severe? You can also do that through EDA as well. And I think that could help reduce the number of alerts or false positives. Potentially, it might be deprioritized. It's important, but not as important to go, I need to do it straight away in the middle of the night. Right. I'll do it in the morning. That sort of thing. So you can do that within EDA as well. So do that as a categorization step as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We can clap again.